Analysts believe that for decades, Israel and the United States have been working to reshape the Middle East in an effort to control its natural resources, believing that changing governments and installing pro-Western puppet regimes will ultimately help the Zionists to achieve its goal.
إسرائيل هي العدو الحقيقي لكل العرب.
Israel is the real enemy of the Arab nation, especially to the Palestinians, who have suffered on the hands of the Israeli occupation and its racist and criminal policies, continuing to do so against all Arabs and our people in the occupied Golan Heights.
The people of the Golan believe that Israel, that is supported by the United States, will not stop its expansion plans, even if this means opening the occupied Golan front for a new war with Syria.
There is a huge pressure by the Israeli occupation on the Golan people as a result of their position to the events which are taking place in our motherland, Syria. But we are firm in our stance, and we will always support our homeland and its leadership.
People here say Israel's efforts to start a new war are a part of the Western plot against Syria. In the Golan, people's fear of war on the Israeli-Syrian ceasefire line is growing rapidly. They stated, however, that their concern is not for themselves, but for their homeland Syria and its citizens. They believe that war in the region will bring a great amount of destruction and loss of life. Hamid Awaidat, Press TV, occupied Golan Heights.
Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3, the final part for today. Check out my website, ggnonline.com, if you'd like to help or donate. And yeah, okay, so I was gonna put this video at the end. Hopefully we can get to it. I just wanted to demonstrate how slow this internet is. It's ungodly slow. This is only a minute, and it's taken 10 minutes to buffer, 30 seconds to, I mean, dude. So hopefully if it can buffer 60 seconds, 70 seconds worth of video in time after 15 minutes of doing this video, maybe we'll get to watch it. I haven't seen it yet. So, Israelis march to demand conscription for all. I've covered this before, just to follow up. Thousands of protesters have rallied in Tel Aviv Saturday demanding an extension of compulsory military or community service to all Israelis, including Arabs and ultra-Orthodox Jews who are currently exempt. Military service is compulsory for most Israelis over the age of 18, with men serving 3 years and women 2. So the ultra-Orthodox Jews and Arab Israelis are excluded under the so-called Tal Law, or Tel Law, passed in 2002 but ruled unconstitutional in February by Israel's Supreme Court, which ordered that it must become void by August 1st. Then we have initiative sees observant gays join religious Zionist party. It says here, Havruta, religious LGBT organization, urges members to join right-wing Zionist religious party Habayit, and it says here, minister said, I suspect this is a PR stunt. So the religious homosexuals and lesbian organization Havruta is calling on its members to register as members of the party. I guess it's Habayit or Hayehudi party, with the purpose of establishing a gay cell within its ranks and thus influence the position of its members of the gay and lesbian community within the religious public. Russia's Putin says the West is on decline. He said on Monday the West's influence was waning as its economy declines, but warned Russian diplomats to be on their guard against backlash from Moscow's former Cold War enemies. So it says in a speech to Russian ambassadors. He also took a shot at the West by condemning any unilateral actions to solve the international disputes and underlined the importance of resolving such conflicts through the United Nations. Kind of like the Georgia Guidestones, right? Handling of external disputes in basically a global court, world court. Iran's foreign minister says Syrians should choose their leader in 2014 vote. He says the Syrian people should be left to choose their leader in elections due in 2014, and until then, countries should avoid aggravating the bloodshed by interfering on the ground, said the Iran's foreign minister. So this is a big deal, because I actually watched a video of Assad talking to, I don't know who it was some female news anchor, Diane Sawyer or something like that. It was basically, they just attacked him with questions, loaded questions. The entire interview was like almost 45 minutes long, from a couple of years ago, I think. No, maybe it was even just a year ago. But either way, it was all centered on what? The elections, which was when the international community said, you have to change your ways. they came up with a referendum and it changed the constitution. So they wanted to do this, hold these elections in 2014, and Assad was saying, well, we can't just like force it down our throats. We have to do this slowly, and it will get done. And so the thing is they're trying to basically get a regime change before this 2014 vote. So the goal is to keep the violence going, which is why the West is arming the insurgents, terrorists, or the peaceful activists, as they're known by the mainstream media. It says here, West clings to Arab influence with airstrike democracy. Again, a Putin quote. So he's been in the news a lot lately. It says he's criticized the West for clinging to its influence in the Arab world under the guise of humanitarian operations. So this comes out of like think tanks that come up with this crap policy. I mean, it's a very effective policy. I mean, you could just go in there and start killing fucking people and saying you're doing it to save people, you know? He dubbed Western involvement in Arab affairs as the export of rocket and bomb democracy. And of course what he's talking about here is something like this: in Yemen, U.S. backing mass Saudi covert ops, as Yemen's military backed by U.S. Special Forces and the CIA drive al-Qaeda forces. They're not really that, they're secessionists. That's what they are. Out of their southern strongholds. See, Saudi Arabia's intelligence agents, old hands at operating in Yemen, are playing a vital clandestine role. The Americans prefer to work with the Saudis rather than Yemen's security. It says that they can do what Americans cannot. They understand the culture and provide human intelligence. And all this kind of makes sense when you kind of tie it all together with bin Laden, rich Saudi family, Yemen, I think it was a naval ship that was bombed in Yemen a while back, tied to bin Laden. Yemen, Salih allied troops destroyed oil pipeline. So it says here it costs Yemen $15 million per day. The Yemeni government is accusing members of their own military loyal to former dictator Salih of having destroyed an oil pipeline, saying Salih had ordered the attack as part of the last-ditch effort to keep himself in power. Another example, the U.S. turning Philippines into military hub for treaty partners. It says here the recent bilateral cooperation agreement between Japan and the Philippines is part of the United States strategy of rebalancing its forces in Asia, a militant group claimed on Monday. So it says here that besides the Philippines, Australia and South Korea are being mobilized to support U.S. strategic rebalancing of its forces in Asia. Kofi Annan and Syrian president agree on new political approach. It says here that the envoy to Syria, Kofi Annan, has announced that he has reached an agreement with Syrian President Assad on a new political approach to end the country's unrest, describing his recent talks with Assad as constructive and candid. Annan told reporters on Monday that they had discussed the need to end the violence and ways and means of doing so. Annan did not mention details of the new approach. He only said that during the talks he stressed the importance of moving ahead with political dialogue, which the president accepted. We agreed on an approach which I will share with the armed opposition, he told reporters after meeting Assad in Damascus. So Russia is saying no Russian arms supplies to Syria until there's stabilization. They will not deliver any new types of weapons or sign any military contracts with Syria until the situation there stabilizes, the deputy head of the Federal Service for Military Technical Cooperation said on Monday. Meanwhile, the Syrian Navy conducts drills as NATO ships approach. That's right, they just floated the floating base, sent a floating base over there in the Persian Gulf. Syria has announced it has carried out successful drills of its naval forces during the weekend. It says here, as news surfaced, that NATO has sent 3 ships to patrol the area. The Syrian military drills include the launching of rockets from ships with land-based support aimed at rehearsing the repulsion of a supposed attack by sea. And an interesting article that I found was Turkey says no sign of missile attack yet in jet incident. So the defense minister has said that the examinations are ongoing as to how a Turkish military jet was shot down by Syria last month, saying there's no sign of land-to-air missiles or another kind of weapon on found pieces of the plane. So that's kind of odd. Then we have Clinton on Syria, sand running out of the hourglass. That's what she said. So says here, U.S. Secretary of State warned on Sunday that time is running out on Syrian peace hopes and warned that the Syrian state could collapse. So here's the key, guys. The sooner there can be an end to the violence and a beginning of a political transition, i.e. regime change process, not only will fewer people die, but there is a chance to save the Syrian state from catastrophic assault that would be very dangerous to not only Syria, but the region. So this is some pretty harsh implications that she's talking about, saying that the Dutch and British discussed stepping up Syrian sanctions. The Dutch foreign minister said he and his British counterpart had discussed stepping up sanctions against Syria to hasten an end to the 16 months of conflict, i.e. an insurgency by them, right? So they're going to try to starve their people, the Syrian people. And I think they've already been under sanctions for at least 5 years, if not more. Iran's army defeats mock enemy in electronic warfare. They said their air defense units tested their electronic warfare equipment and gave a firm response to the mock enemy during a tactical exercise. Iran's army ground forces are going to be holding a military drill. Last week, the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps held a 3-day missile drill codenamed the Great Prophet 7 in central Iranian province. Putin's 4th of July message was, what? Russian nuclear-capable bombers intercepted near West Coast in second U.S. air defense zone intrusion in 2 weeks. 2 Russian strategic nuclear bombers entered the U.S. air defense zone near the Pacific coast on Wednesday and were met by U.S. interceptor jets, defense officials told the Free Beacon. It was the second time Moscow dispatched nuclear-capable bombers into the 200-mile zone surrounding U.S. territory in the past 2 weeks. An earlier intrusion included bombers that took place near Alaska as part of Arctic war games that a Russian military spokesman said included simulated attacks on enemy air defenses and strategic facilities. But remember, Canada just had Russia doing a flyover. Remember that? They were actually doing a little reconnaissance mission for their defense and strategic facilities. Those are the same words that they used, and Canada knew about it. They allowed it. Russia is making a case for a Eurasian Union. Negotiations between Russia, Kazakhstan, and Belarus are advancing over the creation of a Eurasian Union which would abolish custom duties and unify economic policies amongst the participating countries. We have Kazakhstan and Russia conduct joint military exercise. They said the opening ceremony of the joint exercise basically had been held today in the southeastern part of Kazakhstan. They said here it included divisions of airborne troops of the Kazakh armed forces as well as units and divisions of the Regional Command South, which were attending a technical command post exercise. Georgian soldiers are going to be attending a joint naval exercise with Americans. They do this a lot, right? Georgian soldiers will take part in a joint international exercise which will be held in the Ukraine. And it says here the 2-week U.S.-Ukrainian military exercise will be called Sea Breeze 2012 and will begin on July 9th. Next up, Uzbekistan turns into major U.S. ally in Central Asia. A large delegation consisting of representatives from the State Department and U.S. Congress is expected to visit Uzbekistan in the near future. The opening ceremony of the General Motors new plant has been held in Uzbekistan this month. Alright, so here's some conspiracy news. Clinton, Russia, and China will pay the price for supporting Assad. So, let's see what happened. How is Russia going to pay the price recently? Oh, death toll. Russian flood rises to 171 killed in a devastating floods in the Black Sea region. So the flooding has turned streets into swirling muddy rivers and submerged thousands of homes as many were feared drowned in their bed. It says here some are suspecting that the water had been deliberately released from a reservoir in the mountains above. It says here the resort town of Galenjik received 5 months worth of rain in 24 hours. This sounds like kind of the kicker here. U.S. offers help to eliminate southern Russia floods disaster. That's right. So the U.S. government has offered Russia assistance in eliminating the consequences of a weather modification operation. It says here, heat wave leaves dozens dead in the United States. At least 42 people have died from an unrelenting heat wave that continues to bake a dozen U.S. states from the Midwest to the East Coast, while the sun erupts with the strongest summer solar flare yet. U.S. had the hottest 12 months ever and the hottest first half of the year ever. But do not fear, the Iceman cometh. That's right, scientists do know about the coming ice age, and what? Climate in Northern Europe, reconstructed for the past 2,000 years, says there's a cooling trend that's been calculated precisely for the first time, saying that the long-term trend over the past 2 millennia has been towards climatic cooling. Back to Hitler, she declares Afghanistan a major non-NATO ally of the U.S. as another Afghan soldier opens fire on U.S. troops. 5 wounded in the latest green-on-blue attack just days after police officers shot and killed 3 British soldiers. Afghan women accused of adultery shot dead in public, and the only reason this is out there is for propaganda reasons. Clinton in plea for rights of Afghan women. How timely, isn't it? That story came out. Obama to ask for civilian Afghan aid to 2017. And it didn't really even load anyways. But this is what We do to allies. U.S. crew sings as they open Hellfire missiles on Afghan civilians. Thank you. God bless.